uh, the chapter coordinators of NAPE, everyone that have joined, staff of Chevron. I can see Madam Victoria and a lot of other people. I can also see Dr. Chris, our former EIC. Thank you so much for joining in. I want to welcome Dr. Ikere Akpan, our former coordinator, to this meeting. And so I am very glad. I also see our former UAP coordinator, Ms. Dr. Adesida, as well as former advisory council member, Dr. Abraham. KK, you're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And I believe that we're going to have a fantastic and fulfilling meeting today with Mr. Clement Chukwuka. So without wasting much time, and without much ado, as we'll keep talking, I would like to welcome our president, the president of NAPE, indefatigable president that is very warming and has shown us great leadership skills, to give us a welcome remark. Thank you. Mr. Abiodun, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Harry. I'm sure you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Thank you. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, and fellow explorationists, it's a great honor for me once again to welcome you to your Calabar NAPE Technical Business Meeting. I know today I'll be playing a dual role, but first of all, as NAPE President, I would like to welcome each and every one of us to this technical meeting. Today we stand at a crossroad of energy evolution, and we have been talking about it for quite a while. This evolution starts with a monumental role of steering the future of energy towards sustainability and security. And today we are going to delve into another topic. The topic is navigating the future of energy, the role of oil and gas and new frontier for petroleum exploration. We are reminded of our responsibility, and that is the core that this topic is bringing forward again, to innovate and adapt in this ever-changing landscape. The business of oil and gas and the business of energy security is changing. The pathway ahead is lined with challenges, and at the same time, there are quite a lot of opportunities. And I'm sure that is where Clement is going to speak to us again today as a petroleum explorationist. From the depth of our traditional hydrocarbon exploration to the new exciting prospect of new energy frontier, our industry is positioned for transformation, and we cannot be left behind in this journey. So let us embark on this journey with foresight and determination, ready to explore, ready to discover new insight and technology, and be ready to shape the future of our energy. Thank you very much, and I do welcome each and every one of you on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the Advisory Council, and the Executive of NAPE. Welcome to NAPE Uyo Calabar Chapter June Technical Meeting. Thank you. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you so very much, my president. Over to you, GS. Okay, at this moment, we're going to take the safety briefing. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Okechukwu, our treasurer, to handle that. Dr. Okechukwu, are you on board?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, my coordinator. So I want to welcome everyone to the technical section. But before we begin, it is important to ensure everyone understands the safety protocols for the virtual meeting. The following will guide us. Number one, mute your mics. Keep your microphones muted when not speaking to minimize background noise. Number two, use headphones. To avoid feedbacks and echo, use headphones with a built-in microphones if possible. Number three, stable internet. Ensure you have a stable internet connection to prevent disruptions. Number four, avoid multitasking. To stay engaged and contribute effectively to the section, we should avoid multitasking. The next one, emergencies. In case of a health emergency during this section, please ensure you have access to your local emergency contact number. Cybersecurity system and vulnerabilities. Do not click on any suspicious link or provide personal information during this section. Chat and reactions. Engage with this section using chat, reactions, and virtual hand raising to ask questions or make comments. Respectful communications. Maintain a professional and respectful tone in all your communications. Listen actively and avoid interrupting others. Thank you for your attention. Let's have a productive and safe virtual section. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Basi. So it has come to a time that we'll introduce our speaker, and to handle that will be the chairman of this virtual presentation, our own dear president of NAPE, Mr. Abiodun Ogunjobi. So, my chairman, please, I'm handing over to you at this moment to take charge of the presentation, and thereafter the comment, remarks, and also introduce the speaker of today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Harry. And I have the honor to introduce one of us in the person of Clement Chukwuka. Like I did mention, today we play a dual role, and it's not by coincidence. This is an important topic that we all need to discuss today. So Clement is a geologist with Chevron. He's an alumni of the University of Calabar, the University of Ibadan, both in Nigeria, and Purdue University in West Lafayette in the United States. His professional expertise spans the oil and gas value chain and a diverse experience that covers numerous geologic basins around the mid-Atlantic conjugate margin, including working in frontier exploration opportunities in deep water, Suriname and Guyana, offshore Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, Aboran Basin in the middle Mediterranean Sea, south of Spain, and most notable several exploration and asset development in Nigeria onshore, shallow water, and deep offshore segment of the Niger Delta. Clement's career covers stints in offshore production operations, including leading a production operation team at an offshore production facility. Also, Clement has successfully championed major multi-field asset development initiatives aimed at ensuring incremental oil production to create significant value for stakeholders. He is an author and he has co-authored several industry technical papers, and his work on stakeholder engagement, support for regulation, development and advocacy in Nigeria oil and gas industry has not only advanced best practices, but also help shape the policy and the evolving regulatory framework in Nigeria, reflecting his deep understanding of both the technical and social economic dimension of the industry. Furthermore, Clement contributed to the NAPE community over the years is very evident in the group of leading oil and gas associations like ours. In addition to his professional pursuit, Clement is a devoted family man, an AAI enthusiast. He loves good music and strongly believes that Chelsea football will rise again and win the premiership. I join Clement in saying amen to that. You know, of Chelsea. All right, so gentlemen, Clement is going to be speaking to us today as geoscientist. The role of petroleum exploration is more crucial at this time than ever. We are the pioneer when it comes to navigating through uncharted territory. We have gone through many in the past, and now that we are evolving into a new energy, as geoscientists, we need to arm ourselves with cutting-edge technology and deep understanding of what the role of geoscientists are in this new energy landscape. So our expertise will lead the way in continuing to discovering new energy sources, improving our recovery method of the current and the carbon resources that we have, and ensuring that we carry out our operation safely in an efficient and environmentally responsible manner. So I hereby introduce to you Clement Chukwuka as he takes us through this topic, navigating the future of energy, the role of oil and gas, and the frontier for petroleum exploration. Clement, over to you. Clement, over to you. Thank you very much. Kenneth, Clement, your mic is muted.
So
Okay.
good morning. Good morning. Confirm you can hear me.
Excellent. Yes, please go ahead.
I hear you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity and the privilege to, first of all, for that introduction. It's not every time you get the president of an association or professional society to actually get to introduce, you. So for me, that was quite, a very big one. Thank you. And also to the Uyo Calabar chapter of the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists. I want to also thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all and to everyone on this particular call. And if you're joining us from wherever you are, once again, thank you for sparing time. I know we are all very busy people. Committing 1 hour or so to a presentation like this, it's a very huge commitment. So I thank you for logging in, for joining us, and for me particularly, for navigating Zoom. I'm not a Zoom user, but finally I got my way into it, and let's see how this goes. Dr. Harry, kindly confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it. Screen.
Fantastic.
Let's make it to be in presentation mode.
Okay, so am I there yet?
Okay, it's fine now. Excellent.
Okay, great. Like our president said, we are at a cusp in the history of man, and as well as, for our planet. And there are certain conversations that have come to the forefront, and in ensuring that the narrative or the narration for these types of conversation to actually etch into the hearts of policymakers is important for the right people. Petroleum explorationists, as the cases in this particular instance, to take the front seat in ensuring that this conversation is well tailored and authored to ensure that it brings the best value for humanity. Our topic today will be on navigating the future of energy, the role of gas, and what frontiers, what opportunities are there for petroleum explorationists. The important thing to state here is that every time and any time this conversation comes up, several things come to mind. The first, possibly, is, are we going to run out of energy? The second would be, with the burgeoning population across countries and across the world, where does that leave humanity? And of course, for those of us who have been in the practice of finding energy, what then lies for us? Are we being kicked out of the play? So depending on what side you are, these questions would always, come to fore. And while I was putting this together, I went back to the NAPI conference for 2024. And, I started to reminisce on that conference topic. The Nigerian energy trilemma: energy security, sustainability, growth, and affordability. And I believe strongly that perhaps this presentation will be like a precursor or an appetizer to that conference, which will come up sometime in November. And I would encourage each and every one of us, if you've not registered for that conference, please go ahead and do so. I believe strongly that you would have an extension of so many of the conversations that we're going to hear today in that particular conference. I know it's holding in Lagos, and I just want to point to that because most of what we're going to be saying here, you will get an extension of it in that conference. So please do register. So without further ado, the question we'll begin to ask ourselves is, what is energy in itself, and how does the interplay of energy, human progress, all come together? One thing we know for a fact is that energy is vital for human progress. Whether it was the time when flintstones were sparked together, or donkeys pulling stuff across hundreds of miles, thousands of years ago, or camels carrying things on their backs, or the first windmill, or the first locomotive engine out of England, or the bullet trains, and today, the batteries. One thing you would note is that energy is very vital for human progress. And if you take energy out of the equation of humanity, then a lot would not have been achieved. And I want to state out here that also that the future of energy will be driven by three major forces. The first being demographics, the second, decarbonization, and the third, geopolitical rivalry. If you're going to talk about the future of energy anywhere and everywhere, it's important for you to look out for the interplay of these three pillars. What is the demography of this particular place? What is there in decarbonization? And what are the geopolitical dimensions of that conversation? It's also important for me to also state here that living standards and consumer preferences will be a critical factor in determining the future energy mix. Even right now, we're beginning to see that in some cities across the world, some people will tell you, hey, I don't want to drive a car, with gasoline, or I want my truck to be powered by a battery, or I want to live in a house where everything is in gizmos, sort of. All of those preferences going into the future would drive what kind of energy sources that people actually would want to buy into and also pay for. It's important to note that as the world continues to expand, we would see these three key pillars play out in the space for humanity when it comes to that conversation of the future of energy. So the question then we need to begin to ask ourselves is, what about demographics? What about decarbonization? What is in all of that? And why geopolitical rivalry? Of course, we know that if living standards improve, definitely people have a lot more money to buy things. They can then choose what they want, obviously. People want the best for themselves. That's a natural human attribute. And as I go into the next slide, I will delve a bit more into these three key pillars that will drive the future of energy mixes, and the preferences as we spoke earlier on. First and foremost, population will balloon in particularly Southeastern Asia and Africa. Currently, the world's population stands at 7.9 billion, going up to 8. If you log into Worldometer, you would see the numbers there. But by 2050, we know that we're going to add a quarter of that number to the current world population. So we're looking at about 10 billion people on the face of the earth. And that is by current count. It's possible that that number could be higher, way higher, or slightly less. But all indications have it that populations will continue to grow. And these populations particularly will grow in places like Africa, in places like Southeastern Asia. We're already seeing it in Southeastern Asia. We're already seeing it in places like Nigeria, like Congo, like Ethiopia, where population is ballooning as we speak. And of course, you're going to need energy that will support the industrialization of these countries. Of course, living standards will improve in this country as we have seen the rise of the Asian tigers like South Korea, China, India, Malaysia. Demand patterns, of course, will change in time to come. And I will talk about consumer behavior. On the other side of the equation, you're going to see a decrease or a decline in population of developed countries. And this would obviously necessitate the kind of preferences that we're already seeing. If you go to Europe today, you would see a lot of all those windmills across, neighborhoods and all of that. If you come to Canada or to America, you'll see a few things dotting neighborhoods, driven particularly by preferences. And of course, adaptive energy policies to meet evolving needs would definitely be required to enable efficiencies and sustainabilities. No doubt, the number of people to provide for in the near future will increase. The amount of energy that will be required in the near future to support growth, human progress, industrialization will also definitely increase. But one thing that we are beginning to see in every discussion, every conference, and every narrative is the fact that we recognize that energy has to be produced sustainably. Energy has to be produced efficiently. Gone are those days when you can do whatever you like as a corporate or as an individual. So decarbonization will become increasingly intensified across geographical climes. And we will see all sorts of policies that will encourage the development of low carbon infrastructure. A lot of corporates across Europe, across America, across Asia, and even in Africa are beginning to bake in decarbonization practices and policies into their corporate statements. If you open up any one of the big fives or any of the independents across the globe, or even any, oil and gas establishment, you would see some narrative on decarbonization because that is the way to go. The whole intent here is aimed at creating a more sustainable and resilient energy system across climes. And of course, this will reshape the landscape towards cleaner and greener future. And I also want to mention the third limb that will impact the future of energy and its discussion as we go into the future. Resource distribution, market stability, and energy security will continue to feed competition for control over critical energy resources. Of late, we've seen the Russia-Ukrainian war and how that has gone on. On the South American side, you see Venezuela laying claims to the oil in Guyana. And I can tell us that you're going to see a lot more of this thing. When it comes to energy, you definitely will see that rivalry, laced with it. Alliances and conflicts will continue to affect supply chains around the world. We saw that at the onset of the Russian-Ukrainian war, and how that spiked up the price of a barrel, I think up to $120 then, and we see that continue to grow. We see ongoing geopolitical rivalry in the Middle East, Iran, Iraq. You see a few things happening out in Southeastern Asia between the Chinese and, other countries. These alliances definitely will affect supply chain. It will affect pricing. It will affect the growth and how energy infrastructure is distributed. It also affects investment flows. And the potential exists for nations to leverage their energy resources as political tools. Nothing stops a country from leveraging its energy resources as a political tool. It's been done in the past, and we know that it's going to be, it's going to continue into the future. And all of this will create the sort of dynamics that can reshape the global energy future, policies, and whatever technological innovations that might ensue. So looking at these three dimensions, demographics, decarbonization, geopolitical rivalry, if you place these three on a map, you can easily write the energy future of any segment or any part of this world. If you come to North America, you throw demographics in, you throw decarbonization in, automatically you know where they're headed. If you go to Africa and you throw demographics and decarbonization and geopolitical rivalry, automatically you'll be able to carve out and see the trajectory that these geopolitical areas are actually headed. A few current themes as we know it. And one of the things I tell pundits is that no matter how you looked into your crystal ball, you cannot categorically say that this is how it is going to end, or this is where it must get to. All we have are models that tend to speak to certain things, and these models are sort of adjusted in time based on what we see in the marketplace. One model that we know for a fact that will continue to be is that global energy consumption has increased and will continue to increase in the year to come. I mean, you can tie energy use, human population, and population growth to human progress. So if you're on that side of the spectrum that believe that human progress drives energy use, of course, as living standards improve, then what you're going to see is that the use of energy will increase. And as the use of energy is increasing, it will drive people to live definitely better lives, and of course, more population, and vice versa. The world's demand for energy will almost double by 2050. And that is truth. All the models, no matter the model you pull up, it will show you that the world's demand for energy will definitely double. And it's hinged on the back of the three things I talked about earlier on: population growth, industrialization, and preferences. Energy use or consumption, as the case is, will be fueled by rapid industrialization. You begin to look at the economic growth and the rise of China, where China is at today, and China is still growing, not giving up. We see that economy most likely doubling from where it is today. You see the likes of India. India has just taken off, and the trajectory for India is not going to be different from what you've seen in China, or even more. Currently, India today is the world's largest country by population size, overtaking China. And one of the things that we see is that that population, the population of India, is still going to continue to increase in time to come. And other emerging Asian territories, Malaysia, Philippines, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, and all of that. And of course, oil demand will continue to grow globally. If anybody says, hey, oil demand is not going to grow, no, step back. Because the ingredients that will make humanity or humankind look for energy is there. And that is the world is going to industrialize. The world's population is going to increase. And if the population is going to increase, if there's going to be industrialization across geographical climes, then people are going to look for energy. And they're going to look for it anywhere and everywhere, regardless of political boundaries, because humanity needs energy for progress. It's important that I state here that Asia will account for the bulk of global growth because of the burgeoning population. But of course, Africa will also contribute significantly to that energy use growth, because Africa would most likely experience the fastest growth in population and as well as energy demand. Take, for example, Nigeria. The forecast is that Nigeria is going to hit 500 million people, 450 to 500 million people in the next 30 years. And that might even happen before the next 30 years. But is that going to happen? Definitely, we're on that trajectory. With a birth rate of above 3%, then if you run the math, you'll find out that Nigeria will get there sooner than we all think. The same thing with Congo, the same thing with Ethiopia, the same thing with countries like Egypt. These are countries already ringing over 100 million people and above. And of course, these countries will also want to industrialize. And as this industrialization kicks in Africa, and it's going to kick in a very vigorous way in Africa, there will be need for energy. I will not rule out the in-country regulatory and policy initiatives that definitely Africa and the countries in it will have to set to ensure that strategic goals are met that will influence the continental energy landscape. If you look at the plot on the bottom left, again, I know a lot of us will begin to ask the question, what is energy transition? Where are we headed with it? One thing I have seen, and these are my personal comments, is that the world has always experienced energy inclusion and not transition. From the beginning of time, man has used biomass. Until today, man still uses biomass. Maybe not in the proportions they used in the past, but the thing we need to note is that that energy source is still being used. Look at coal, for example. The growth of coal was perhaps in the 17th century, 16th century, thereabout, up to the 18th century. But today, you can see the growth of coal still rising. At some point, we all recognize that coal is a dirty fuel, yes. But the question is, if you step back and begin to ask yourself, if a country had only coal resources in its territory and cannot afford any other energy form, the likely thing for that country to do is to use its coal. The same thing for crude oil. We saw, crude oil has always been there in some form. Some 4,000, 5,000 years ago, bitumen, was used. Tar sand was used, but in the Middle East by the Mesopotamians. But the real inclusion of oil, that's fossil oil, came literally in the 19th century. And from that time, the growth of that type of energy source has increased. And what you would notice that through time, more and more energy types, begin to come in, right? The only thing that I tell anyone who comes into this conversation is that what you will find out is that human beings will go for energy sources that are cheaper for them to achieve their objectives. The issue of sustainability and all of that, yes, they are there, but you have to then bring that in. Nobody wants to buy an energy source that's more expensive than the other. If gas is cheaper for you, of course, you will go to gas primarily before you then step into, the emissions and all of that. But I know that today there's now that thematic attempt across nations, the Paris Accord, COP28 and all of that, to say, hey, you know what? Regardless of your fossil fuel and all of that, let's do it sustainably, let's do it in a clean way, let's make sure energy is affordable. And that is a conversation that will go forward. In the last 20 years or so, we've seen, last 30 years or so, we've seen nuclear rising. We've seen hydropower, wind, solar, modern biofuels, and other renewables coming. But if you look at the proportion of the renewables and the biofuels and the solar and the wind, you will agree in this particular meeting that there are still ways to go with those energy sources or types. On the top left or right, you see how energy use distribution is shown. And like as I mentioned, Southeastern Asia, depicted in green, that's in non-OECD Asia, would continue to grow in their energy consumption. If you notice the Americas, OECD America, the United States, Canada, it's the blue. It's literally going to be flat for them. But Asia will grow. And once Africa takes off, the trajectory will not be different from what we see in Asia. And on the bottom right, you now see the split going into 2050, the trajectory of the various energy mix or consumption. You would see that natural gas is growing and growing significantly. From 2000, natural gas is, I think it's the burgundy or the red, depending on what your screen is showing you. From 2000 to 2050, you see how natural gas triples. Oil in its, oil continues to be a very significant and relevant fuel for the future. Even dirty coal, as we call it, right? Coal will still be in that energy mix. But significantly, the renewables will grow. And what we are saying here is the most important thing is to ensure that there's energy access to humankind. Not just access to energy, it has to be equitable. And not just being equitable, it has to be affordable. So depending on where you are, renewables might just be it. But if it has to be oil, then it has to be sustainable. It has to be produced in an environmentally friendly manner. And of course, you have to decarbonize. At some point, all the models show that coal will taper off. But again, that is subject to further discussion, because the question is, when you go to certain countries where all they have is coal, is anybody going to tell them not to use the coal to produce the electricity? Nah, it's not going to work, right? So regardless of where you find yourself or where countries find themselves, the most important thing here is access to energy, affordability, equitability, and low price will continue to be a conversation and a discourse that will continue. The future of the world will require more energy. That's something that, we have said. And you just have to believe it. This energy has to be produced sustainably. If you take away energy, you take away human progress. The question we then need to begin to ask ourselves is, how do we sustainably produce this energy? How do we ensure that we do it right? How do we ensure that the future of the world is baked into an energy framework that is not only accessible, but equitable for communities around the world. I have put together some models that I've spent some time to look at. And I call them suggested future energy models. And the reason I say they are suggested is that after every 5 years that you test any model that has been put forward, that model is always adjusted. So if you go back to 2000 and looked at this model, what they forecasted and where the world is, you will find out that they needed to change a few things. There's real benefit in hindsight. And that's what and anytime I look at this future energy demand models, I begin to ask myself, do we really understand that future? And do we really understand humanity and what humanity wants out of energy? On the left side, you have the oil demand model. By the way, these models are from BP, British Petroleum. You have the McKinsey model, you have the Deloitte model. Everybody has a model, ExxonMobil model, all sorts, right? But I like the BP model because it simplifies a lot of things and expressly tells you what the model is lacking so that you can also guard your own expectations as to how the models are being used. So if you look at it on the left side, you see the oil demand model. The blue is actually the net zero. That is to say, keep carbon in the ground. Do not produce anymore. And what you're saying there is by 2050, oil demand would plummet from where it is to about 20 million. Currently, the world uses about 95 million barrels of oil per day. And what they're saying that by 2050, on the net zero model, the blue line, oil is going to drop to about 20 million. If they use the accelerated model for oil demand, they're saying, okay, maybe it will come down to 40 million by 2050. But the current momentum as we have it is that by 2050, the world will still continue to demand about 75 million barrels of oil per day. It's interesting to note that if you come back to this model in the next 5 years, all the colors, green, orange, and blue, will be adjusted. I have watched this model through time, and there's something I've noticed that we keep shifting it. And again, it goes back to human wants, it goes back to satiation, it goes back to preferences, right? Are you going to win this world of oil? Let's see what holds in the future. In the middle plot, you see the natural gas demand. The good thing about when you look at natural gas is that it does not plummet the way oil, the oil demand, shows up. Natural gas is a bit more subtle. And you will see that flat line between 2020 and 2025 or 2028. That flat line where all the three models come together simply shows that the world have recognized that natural gas will be a bridge fuel as the world continues to decarbonize and the transition progresses. Increasing demand in emerging economies definitely will spike the use of natural gas. And that is the green line, the new momentum. You can actually see the spike. This is largely industrialization of emerging economies. What if this model is wrong? It could be wrong. What can make it go wrong? And that is a question, modelers continue to ask. This green could actually run in this direction or even continue this way. Because when these countries industrialize at the scale they want to, trying to catch up with the rest of the world, they would definitely need energy to do so. The difference between this new momentum and the other models definitely is that offset by a shift away from natural gas and the low carbon energy consumption of the developed world. But regardless of how you look at it, the use of natural gas will certainly continue to grow after the flat line. On the left side, you have installed wind and solar capacity across the world. And I like the way this is shown, is anticipatory. The belief is that this will continue to grow into 2050. But one thing I want to tell us is that, and I'm going to show that in subsequent slides, that there's something actually that can make wind and solar capacity work. Unlike oil and natural gas, which is very easy to develop, solar and wind will require a lot more, particularly in terms of scalability and also in terms of scaling, and also in terms of where you deploy the infrastructures to make them work. So moving forward, we talked about role of natural gas. We talked about that flat line. What is gas to us, and how will gas help balance that energy demand that we are seeing? Across climes, across conversations, across technical conferences, natural gas has been seen and often referred to as a bridge fuel in energy transition. We cannot overrule the role natural gas will play. And that is why virtually everybody is taking position in the natural gas space. Of course, it emits less carbon when burned compared to oil and to coal. Is a no-brainer there. And is also available in vast quantities. As at 2022 year end or so, the world had about 6,644 trillion cubic feet of gas reserves. And if you look at the plot on the middle right here, the light blue is the proven gas reserves the world has. The dark blue is what the world has been able to consume. And that tells us that gas is there, gas is available, gas can be developed, and gas can be used to power the entire world. Consumption is barely 1.9 to 2% of the proven reserves that the world has. Also, natural gas from data sources is estimated to be the fastest growing fossil fuel in the world. And because of its versatility, it can be applied to many sectors. Whether you talk about petrochemicals, whether you talk about fertilizers, natural gas can be used for all sorts. And the discovery and innovation actually continues. So what then lies in for countries that are so blessed with natural gas? Africa, case in point, has successfully developed oil and gas resources, particularly in key regions: Nigeria, Algeria, Libya, Angola, and more recently, the multi-TCF finds in Mozambique. Ghana is coming up gradually, Ivory Coast is there, and of course, Egypt is growing in its gas find, a whole place being opened up offshore Egypt. And the discoveries across these countries and continents has helped to shape, or is helping to shape, the energy landscape of Africa. I mentioned earlier on that Africa's hunger for energy has not kicked in. And when it kicks in, it will significantly grow by 2040. And similarly to other geopolitical regions, it's going to be controlled by interrelated factors also that reflect the countries or the continent, again, demographics, economics, and also social dynamics. In social dynamics, what was saying is still the same as preferences, right? I did mention earlier on that the population will increase. Currently, Africa is about 1.2 billion people. By 2040, Africa will be necking 2 billion people, walking the continent, making it the fastest growing region globally. And this demographic explosion definitely will use iPads and iPhones. They would watch flat screens. They would need energy to do things that they do. There'll be rapid urbanization, and this will significantly increase energy demand. As Africa continues to develop, as we have mentioned, there will be greater need for energy to fuel industries, commercial enterprises, and of course, to modernize our agriculture. On the right side, I have a McKinsey plot that shows the growth of the world's energy consumption for use in industries. I compared the world versus Africa. So the world will grow at 10%. That's the world excluding Africa will grow at 10%. Africa will grow at 28% or so. And these numbers are conservative. If that urbanization and industrialization kicks off in Africa, it might even neck up to 30-35%, depending on what we see. Of course, in road transport, in buildings, in chemicals, in the use of cars, development of industries across the continent. So the question is this rising going to happen? Yes, it will happen. It has worked, it has happened elsewhere. It's only a matter of time for it to kick off in Africa. And one energy source that will be very important and that would enable Africa's growth is gas. There's a growing significance of gas in Africa. Shift to new frontiers and discoveries of multi-TCF gas resources across the continent. Mozambique ran 100 TCF within a space of 10 to 15 years. Look at what is happening in Egypt, discoveries. You know, Nigeria has tons of gas resources waiting to be developed. Those found are begging to be developed. You know, the same thing with Mauritania. There is an FLNG coming up offshore Mauritania. And also the likes of, you know, Congo, Angola will continue to grow resources. Tanzania will continue to, and even the likes of Uganda, for example, will continue to grow in their gas resources. These changing trajectory fits and ties into the larger global energy transition, where all models are pointing to the fact that gas will form the cornerstone in powering the continent. The bottom left plot shows in 2022 the size of gas contribution to energy versus in 2022 versus in 2050. You can see it's almost doubling for gas. What we have also seen is that energy insecurity, or let me say energy security demands in Europe, you know, continues to trigger further development of Africa's vast gas resources. As we speak, there are several ongoing gas projects in Africa. At the last count, 5 massive LNG plants are being developed and several transcontinental gas pipelines. Nigeria is not left out of it. I think this morning or so, we saw the pictures, Gola LNG, you know, Gola FLNG signing up with NNPCL, which is a very good one, you know, on the development of gas resources in the Niger Delta. And that's just one of the many. There are several gas fields waiting to be opened up in Nigeria. The bottom right plot, you would see several countries and how they line up in their growth of LNG exports. Nigeria is very, very primary in this particular block. But one of the things that we see that Mozambique is actually growing, and who knows, might overtake and become the largest LNG supplier in Africa by 2050. Mozambique currently has about 120 TCF and still growing. But that's not to say that we don't have more gas. We do have more gas in Nigeria, but then the next question is we need to bring it to the market. So I'll touch on Nigerian gas landscape a little bit and I'll move into the concluding slides. Nigeria holds the largest proven natural gas reserves in Africa. We are top 10 in the world. We should be proud of it as Nigerians and as a country, Nigeria, 209 TCF. And that is still, that number is what we have found, right? or what we have encountered, let me change it, what we have encountered, there's a lot more to be discovered. This accounts for about 33% of total natural gas reserves in Africa. And there are several sector initiatives that will help to grow the utilization of Nigeria's gas. And these are at varying stages. The Decade of Gas, Nigerian Gas Master Plan, we've seen the recent presidential directive to enable gas growth, and several other things. The Compressed Natural Gas Utilization Program has also been embraced for fuel transportation in Nigeria, and several things. We have gas. Gas is waiting to be used in the country. The success of our gas transformation will depend on the ability of the government and all stakeholders to work together to seize the inherent opportunities that the sector offers. And there are several inherent opportunities. The entire delta can be littered by petrochemical plants of all sorts using Nigeria's gas for Nigeria's growth. Leveraging the country's abundant natural gas resource and infrastructure network will definitely move Nigeria towards a cleaner and more sustainable and economically beneficial energy future. Like as I mentioned earlier on, energy resources can be used as a political tool. And the earlier nations, particularly in Africa, began to understand this and appropriate this to themselves, the better. Because the energy consumption across the world will continue to rise. So we've said a whole lot: gas, transition, models. What there lies in for petroleum exploration? Because when the energy transition conversation started, a lot of people thought that's the end for our profession. Not much more remaining for us. But I can tell us that in that energy transition value chain, anyhow you look at it, the geologists will be at the center of that journey. So I have a picture here from the Rocky Mountain Coal Mining Institute, modified by the MPC here in America. And what I have here shows everything and anything on that energy transition journey. From the left side, industrial and other uses, to carbon-based fuel, to ethanol plant, electricity generation, refining, cement, steel, natural gas processing. The end of it is, what do you do with the carbon? And one solution there under, the popular mantra, the CCUS, is to sequester. And if you're going to sequester that carbon, which technically is geologic storage, that is where you and I come in again to the picture. So we are here for the long haul. We ain't going anywhere as practitioners, as explorationists. It's just for us to tweak, what we know a little bit to be able to adapt to the future. Definitely, all that conversation about sequestering carbon and all of that is centered on which reservoirs do we bury this carbon? Whether it's blue hydrogen, whatever it is, where do we bury that carbon, right? And it's going to be informations. Somebody has to map it out. Somebody has to check the extent. Somebody has to check the porosity, permeability. Can it actually hold the CO2 that we're going to sequester in it? And of course, there's a whole role for us to play. So I just have a small table that can actually be expanded. Under the CCUS, for capture, roles like geochemistry and site assessment would definitely be sought after, heavily sought after. Under use, geochemistry, metallurgy, material science, soil chemistry, and all of that. Under transport, GIS, environmental assessment, site characterization. So you see the energy transition opportunity on the left, and you see all the roles that can be applied to those transition opportunities. Under subsurface storage and enhanced oil recovery, think about it, basin modeling is still going to be the same practice: pore pressure, fluid flow, stratigraphy, sedimentology, reservoir prediction. So it's still going to be the same thing that we do. but now tailored to meet the demands and the needs of the future. Others include soil carbon sequestration and geothermal energy value chain. So petroleum exploration is definitely will be integral to every part of the carbon capture, utilization, and storage value chain. So don't cut the dial yet. We are entering into another frontier. We're entering into the future. We're entering into an era of even greater relevance to hone our skills. And in conclusion, or just for me to pause a little bit, the future of energy is lower carbon. We cannot overemphasize that. And whatever transition that we're talking about will require solutions, scale, and speed. Natural gas will serve as a critical bridge fuel in this transition. And of course, Nigeria can emerge as a key player in the global energy market by leveraging its abundant natural gas resources. We do need effective policies which are crucial to fostering a conducive environment for natural gas development. And lastly, the future of energy, I would say, is promising. And you and I will play a key role in helping to meet the growing energy needs of humankind. It's important to understand that there are arguments on the left and on the right. But when it comes to the future, when it comes to navigating the future of energy, what we all need to do is to move forward. And by so doing, we will be meeting the demands of humankind for its progress. Thank you very much. And thanks for listening. I think that's my last slide. And I will pause and turn it back to the chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I need to put on my camera now. I mean, that was a wonderful presentation. I think we can give a virtual applause to Clement. He really deserves this, you know. And I'm sure because there has been a lot of anxiety when this topic of energy transition is being discussed. Is energy transition going to take away our job? Is geoscientists going to change to something else? And I think, Clement, you have actually done justice to this topic. And I also like the way you started your conversation, that this is like a precursor to what we are going to discuss in November. We have started the discussion of energy transition for quite a while now. And I think we'll continue to talk about it until we are all fully, emerge into the conversation and understand what this transition actually means. For Africa, we have been advocating, and we'll continue to advocate for an inclusive transition. And that is our main agenda that we have taken to all the COPSIS meetings that are taking place. Inclusive transition, recognizing energy poverty in Africa, and like you said, there is no way you abandon your source of living because you want to transit into a cleaner energy. Survival first, life has to be sustained. So, and I think this is a very wonderful presentation, Clement. I really give you my applause, and I can see that a lot of comment is already coming up on the platform and telling you how wonderful this presentation has been. So I'll just do a little summary. I won't go through everything you have said. Like I did mention, the conversation continues, and we are going to read more about this. We are going to learn more about this when we come to our November conference. But let me just summarize. Clement has been able to explain to us the global demands for energy and what energy really entails. He started by telling us that energy is vital to life. to human being existence. So what that means is that without energy, we cannot survive. So whether we like it or not, there must be a source of energy. So that has been put on the table, that as long as human race continue to exist, the demand for energy will continue in whatever shape and form. As long as human race continue to exist, energy demand will continue. But Clement was able to tell us three key drivers of the global energy demand. It talks about demography, it talks about decarbonization, and it talks about geopolitical rivalry. And we have seen all of that playing very, very well in the current trend that we have. The demography is going to be population driven. Now we are talking of India overtaking China as the most populous country in the world. Definitely they will need energy. The same thing applies to us. Nigeria has been predicted. We are going to get to close to half a billion. So there will be energy to support that population. So Clement also refer us to the geopolitical trend, especially when the Ukrainian-Russian war came up. Don't forget, and let me just remind us, UK has abandoned their coal for a while, but when that war came up, they opened up their coal. What that tells you is that survivor first. They open up the coal to support the energy demand. Otherwise, the UK industry will have been in crisis. So that is to tell us the geopolitical power that energy availability plays in the global industry. So Clement now use that to take us back to our November conference, energy trilemma, sustainability, security, and affordability. So the question we'll be asking ourselves is how can we secure our energy future as Nigeria? First of all, let's internalize it, then put it into the African context. How can we secure our future energy demand? As of today, Nigeria requires about 20,000 megawatts of energy to power our industry and home. We are doing about 5,000. Where is the 15,000 going to come from? Now, you can imagine what it will then mean if the population that is roughly 2 plus million is now double to 500 million. Definitely, we are going to need more than 20,000, maybe 50,000 megawatts of electricity. Where is that electricity going to come from? Then the next question that we need to ask ourselves is that how can we have this energy securely? Now, don't forget also quickly that most of our onshore production are currently being impaired by security challenges in the Niger Delta. And most of the wells that are showing on the onshore, they all come also with AG. We have never been exploring for gas, deliberate exploration for gas. Most of the gas resources that we have are bypassed when we are looking for our oil. And when these wells are shutting because of equation challenges, then there won't be enough gas to power. So you can imagine, you can see the security challenges. If you cannot produce your well, you cannot evacuate your production, then you don't have gas, and you can gas to the gas turbines. So it's a it's a multi-linked effect. The more gas we have to produce, the more that is available to power, the more the gas turbine power can power, the more the organizer, hairdresser, industry can have power to do what they're doing. And the third leg is affordability. Now, energy prices have gone up, fuel prices have gone up. Not everybody is still able to afford it. So we need a cleaner energy. At the same time, it must come very cheap. Renewable as of today don't come cheap. Solar energy as of today For those of us that have solar panel, they don't come cheap. So we need to look at all of these and be able to secure the future of our country and in the industry. They cannot talk about the global demand, the current trends, and the fact that when we go into 2050, the global demands will double as the population is expected to double from 7.5 billion to about 10 billion. The global demand will double. And in all of this, gas is going to play a critical role. Even though the model have changed over time, I just cited an example. Nobody will have predicted that UK will go back to their coal, but they did went back to the coal, and that changes whatever projection everybody must have made in the past. So Kenneth made mention of that there is interplay, a continuous interplay on how this works out, and it's going to continue until when we get to 2050. We can then look back and see whether our model works or not. So the role of gas in meeting energy demand, Clement said is very, very key. Even though the global reserves versus the consumption is very, very low. So what that means is that we have a lot of opportunity to explore, especially in Africa. Clement mentioned the findings in Mozambique and some of the East African countries, the findings in Angola, what we have in Algeria, what we have in Libya. Africans still have a lot of energy that are yet to be tapped, and we need to tap them for the significance of our continent, because we have been talking about energy poverty for a while, whereas we have the energy. So what will it take for us to tap into those energy so that we can bring down the energy poverty that the African continent is currently exploring? So now, to cap it all, Clement talked about the reserves in Nigeria. We are talking about 290 CF. And we have had conversation even at NAPE technical sections that this could be 600 because there has not been deliberate policy to explore for gas. Most of the gas resources we have, they are bypassed where we are looking for our oil. So opportunities is there for Africa, opportunity is there for Nigeria. The time to get these resources on the table is now, that they are still very valuable. We can then tap into the resources to now use them to diversify other sectors of the economy. That is what UAE has done in the past. That is what some other countries are doing, using what they have today to prepare for the energy security of the tomorrow. And I think for Nigeria, the time to tap into it is now. So the CNG has been embraced. Every one of us have cylinder in our home. We are using compressed natural gas. So since CNG has been embraced, can we develop this more? That is the question that Clement is asking us this morning. So, but coming to us as explorationists, geoscientists, our job is not going anywhere. Rather, we are going to have more to do. When the energy transition started, nobody was talking about carbon storage. Nobody was talking about carbon capture. But in the course of this conversation, then the topic of CCU came on board, that we can capture this carbon that is creating a menace to the world, we can utilize it, and we can store it. So for geoscientists, whether you are a geochemist, environmentalist, or reservoir engineer, reservoir geologist, the job is still there for you. So it's now, what is left for us is to up our skill. We have to reskill as best as we can so that we can position ourselves for the industry of tomorrow. So those are, in a nutshell, some of the important topics that Clement has brought forth for us today to discuss. And I'm going to open the floor now for Q&A. I'm very sure that Clement will be able to do justice to all the questions. Once again, Clement, thank you very much for this insightful discussion this afternoon. And I will go ahead to open the floor for questions. If you want to ask, you can raise your hand. I'm seeing some hands already. So maybe let's start with those hands that are raised. Then we come to the chat room for written questions. So I don't know in any particular order. I can see Dr. Chris Jackson. So Dr. Chris, if you can go ahead with your question or comment, then I'll go to the chat room. Dr. Chris, are you there? Okay, so I'm not sure Dr. Chris is with us. So Clement, let's take the question from the chat room. All right. There is a question for Paula. And Paula says, what are the security for developing countries in energy transition for the ability to trade in oil with limited international policy on energy transition? Clement, can you take that, please?
Yes, I heard that clearly. So let me read out what I heard. What is the ability of developing countries to trade in oil? I think so, even though there are limited policies across the world. That's just to summarize what I heard. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I must say is this, and I showed that in my very first slide, that there are three legs that would drive energy consumption into the future. Number one is demographics. Number two is decarbonization. And number three is geopolitical rivalry. None of these three legs is more important than the other. But what we're going to see going into the future is going to be an interplay of how these things actually come together. So the question is the world going to need more energy in the future? The answer is yes. Definitely there might be shifts in the markets into the future. But insofar as there is demand, then you would always have suppliers. And if there are fewer suppliers where there's demand, Economics 101 tells me that the price will definitely shoot up, to equilibrate in that particular case. What we have seen is countries trying to force or foist certain narratives across the globe. But I can tell you that energy is a major geopolitical tool. We cannot rule that out. I tell people for once, I say, hey, go tell Saudi Arabia not to produce that oil anymore. Go tell them. They won't. India walked out of COP26. And what did India say? India said, Europe, you modernized or you industrialized in 18th century. And you used all sorts of energy to get yourself to where you are today. We're about to get into that particular space ourselves, right? So that conversation will always be there. There would always be that argument back and forth. But one of the things I've also said in this conversation here is, whether you're on the right or on the left, what matters is for the world to move forward, right? And what the world needs is energy that is accessible, equitably distributed, and that is cheap. And anywhere humankind will find that energy, humankind will follow it. So if a particular technology comes in tomorrow that makes energy cheaper, that makes it accessible, makes it equitably distributed, I mean, common sense will tell anybody, go for that, right? So I'm not going to say it's going to be coal or biomass or solar. No, I'm going to look at it from those three dimensions. Is it accessible? Is it sustainable? Is it equitably distributed? And what is the price? Once these 4 dimensions can actually be ticked off, I can guarantee you that the world will go for that energy source or what works for them across geographical climes. So let's back up a little bit and stay away from the argument. Let's look at what moves the world forward, what makes energy affordable, available, and equitably distributed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Clement. You actually spoken well. That conversation will continue whether we like it or not. And the only thing I can add as the chairman is that we also need to look inward and reduce our dependency on those policy makers. And you recall that this is one of the reasons why we celebrated the coming of the Africa Energy Bank, because your ability to source for finances to develop your resources is also like going back to these same policymakers who said they are not funding fossil fuel. But if you put your resources together as Africa, you will be able to develop your resources using your own fund instead of depending on other people who will guide where you can utilize their money. So the policy will continue to be there, and I quite agree with you. We should focus less on the policy and focus more on what we can do to develop our resources using our own internal generated revenue. And this is where Africa must come together and make sure we work together to make this happen. Thank you very much. So I will take one more question from the chat room, and this is coming from Victoria. The question, he appreciated your she appreciated your presentation, and the question is notes on the role of regulatory policies and the government incentive play in shaping the future of oil and gas exploration and its integration with renewable energy sources. How do you float the balance of the government policies in that regard?
Okay. The first thing here is that we recognize that gas is going to be a bridge fuel. That's a starting point, right? So gas is going to be a bridge fuel, not just for Nigeria, but for several other countries, as the case is. Now, if you come back to Nigeria, the question then is, what is Nigeria doing to support or to enable the growth of gas development or gas exploration? We can see recently that the current president released an executive order targeting gas development. We've not had it like that before, and we have looked at that the policy directives or policy initiatives from the president, and it means well for gas development. There are other initiatives like the Decade of Gas is a very good initiative for Nigeria. Means well if we take advantage of the recommendations, and we are, as an industry. The master plan also is a very good one. And also the democratization of the use of CNG is also a good one. So you cannot take away gas from energy transition. Gas is in that conversation. And we need to start from somewhere. Nigeria has already started from somewhere. Like Mr. Chairman said, there's a lot more to do. When you look at 290 CF, you begin to ask yourself, if we were to monetize 50% of 290 CF, you can imagine how many petrochemical plants, LNGs, and all sorts that can actually give us. So definitely the government is really bringing out policies to support that. But I know that we can do a lot more. But we need to start from somewhere. And even under the renewable energy space, there is a lot of things now being touted. The Nigerian National Climate Action is also being touted. The green economy is also being touted. A lot of all these things are already in the works. But it's important to note that we have reliable energy sources in this country that can be developed for the benefit of Nigeria and also for Nigerians. That's where I'm going to leave that. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Clement. Okay, so we take one more question. I think that's the only 3 questions that we have on the chat room. This is from Nicholas Odo. The need for more energy in the world will be on a high demand in 3 years' time, as we saw from the presentation, and the world also needs a climate transparency. Want to believe that? How can companies or industry prepare to meet this dual expectation?
Okay, there's nothing far-fetched in this. A lot of companies have already embraced, first of all, decarbonization. A lot of companies, in fact, I can barely think about any company that is not talking about decarbonization today. The other thing about transparency is that my belief here is that companies are becoming a bit more embracing to energy transition, and we are going to start to see a lot of that being reflected on their books as to what they are doing. Let's bring that home to Nigeria, for example. A lot of, in 20 years ago, right, if you fly across the Niger Delta, you will see a lot of flares out there. But today, if you do that same, if you fly across the Delta today, a lot of all those flares have been extinguished. Even the smallest indigenous companies in Nigeria are already talking about monetizing their gas because they know it's a sellable resource, right? So I mean, it's a no-brainer that companies will continue to be transparent about it. They're going to continue to report it as it's done, in advanced societies. And Africa is also catching up. Nigeria is also catching up. There's a lot of benefit in monetizing these resources. There's a lot of benefit. And companies are also becoming a lot more socially responsible. So there's no gainsaying that the future is not, the future is promising, the future is bright, but we just have to go it together. It's not a future that will have to be in a hurry to get into, otherwise we'll make mistakes. Imagine a world where you switch off all the light bulbs because you want to turn the world into a particular energy type. No, we have to go in gradually. And as we transit, it will require scale, it will require technology, it will require adaptability, and of course, funding. So it's baby steps, but we will get there. And I can guarantee you, explorationists will be at the core of that transition when the time comes. Thank you. There's another question there.
Okay.
Please, is there any provision for a shift energy transition for increasing demand of renewable energy? Okay, quickly. As I mentioned earlier on, what we have seen through time is more of energy inclusion, right? But to completely extinguish a particular energy source would depend on several factors. We talked about that earlier on. Is the transition going to shift? No. What we're seeing currently is the fact that countries and companies will continue to march towards decarbonizing. We've embraced it. It's something that needs to be done. We need to produce energy more sustainably across and in an environmentally friendly manner. So if this is what we need to do as a people, then that is what the transition will be in the near future. Energy sources that harm the environment, a lot of companies are going to gradually move from those. But even if they choose not to, there'll definitely be policies that will ensure that we are environmentally friendly and sustainable in our production across climate. But I think we're in the right direction, even for Nigeria. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think that we can handle the other questions and comments by mailing Mr. Clement because we're out of time. Thank you so much. I would like to ask the chairman to round off at this point. Then we'll invite President-elect to give the vote of thanks. Then we'll take the announcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari. And once again, I want to thank Clement so much for this thought-provoking and inspiring conversation that we've had today. Like I did mention, this conversation will continue and it will definitely continue. You know, the future is indeed challenging, but it is also ripe for opportunities as geoscientists, and it is up to us as custodian of the earth resources to map out ways by which we can make this profitable and also sustainable for us. Now, don't get me wrong, when we talk about exploration, we are not limiting it to oil and gas alone. Even in the solid minerals, don't forget the vast majority of lithium for the batteries is in Africa. So for geoscientists, there are vast opportunities for you in solid minerals exploration to provide the raw minerals for these renewables and also in the exploration side. So we should not limit ourselves to oil and gas exploration. And believe me sincerely, I don't see any of these energy resources being extinguished in the nearest future. If Britain could go back to their coal, that tells you their coal will still be relevant for years to come. The same way any of these energy resources will be relevant. It's just that the percentages of their contribution to the global energy consumption will change. And that is where I'm going to end it. Let us work together to ensure that the oil and gas industry continue to be a source of energy for every one of us, pull our resources together. We celebrated the AFO agreement because that will provide the needed resources for us to continue to do our exploration activities together. So I urge each and every one of you to also look forward to the NAPE November conference. We are going to discuss this in details at the opening ceremony and also at the various management section. So thank you very much for joining the technical section this afternoon. It's been a very wonderful interaction, and I do hope that we're taking something out of this discussion today. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. So I hand over back to you, the chapter coordinator.
Thank you so much, my esteemed president, for your time and for staying true with us and for all the analysis that you've done. And thank you so much, Clement. So I'll give the opportunity to our dear PE, President-elect, to give a vote of thanks. Thereafter, we'll take the announcement. Please don't go before the announcement is read. There are new things you need to hear before we say the final prayers. Mr. John Bosco, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our dear Prof, Professor Tom Harry, and very hardworking chapter coordinator for you, Calabar. Again, it was all smiles, right? When I, listened through, listening to our dear Clement Chukwuka, right? This is, when, if you see the passion with which he's talks about this topic, you will know that, he doesn't need to prepare. It's something that is in his blood, right? And that's why we continue to leverage on that experience from you, Clement. So I want to start by saying a big thank you on behalf of the entire NAPE community, both the executives, the BOT and the advisory council, and everybody, in country and out of the country, to say big thank you. You didn't start today, you've been doing this ever, and I'm sure you will continue to do this in many years to come. So thank you once more, Clement Chukwuka. I also want to appreciate the chairman of the session, who also had the dual capacity as our president, Biodo Ogunjobi, for, again, steering the discussion and coordinating both the Q&A, but also with some good insight as well into the topic. So again, big thank you to yourself. And while thanking you, the president, let me also then extend that appreciation to other ESCOs on the call. I see the vice president, Ehi is on the call. I see chapter coordinator for Port Harcourt. Also the AGS Mohammed Mala. I see on the call, and also Magnus Kano. I think I mentioned on the call as well, and few other fellows. Kano Adedoje Ojalabi, who is also a former president. Big thank you, because again, this is our community, right? It is our own. We'll make it what it's going to be, and you can see it's not about just the traditional geology, but also the geology of today, but also the geology of tomorrow, as we've listened to the speaker. So without much ado, because I mean, there's still going to be a lot of announcements for all the members that I see dialed in, a lot of people, familiar names and faces, continue to stay connected with all these type of chapter events, because this is how we, as the stakeholders and those that hold the knowledge of the industry, will continue to disseminate and have a fruitful engagement. And has been mentioned a couple of times here in the call, the NAPE conference is coming, and this conversation is going to continue. So I really want to say a big thank you to every single one of you. And to Dr. Harry and your entire team in Uyo Calabar. You guys are doing an amazing job, right? So I would say to yourself and all your team, kudos, and looking forward to more engaging sessions in the future. And with that, I will hand back to you again, Dr. Harry.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. All right, so GS, can you pick up the announcement at this time before we say the last prayer? Thank you. Dr. Chime is here. Dr. Chime, are you on the call? Okay, Tunde, please, can you please put up, okay, that's fine, right here.
You can go ahead, Dr. Harry. Since
All
Dr.
right, fine. Thank you, Tunde. We just finished the Uyo Calabar chapter presentation, and it was such a great one. I know that this conversation will continue, so please look up to the different platforms of NAPE and watch out for the next technical presentation. Also, we're having an upcoming technical presentation titled Cretaceous Beat Basin of Nigeria Data Integration, Modeling, Exploration Insights, and Application. This is taking place in Eco Hotel in Lagos, and it's going to be a wonderful package sponsored by the G-Connect. So please make sure that you plan to attend. Next, please. And then you have the Oka chapter on the 23rd of June. We're having a presentation focused on prospect locations in the Enugu axis of the Anambra Basin. Insights from gas exploration incidents and oil seeps. So look out for this. Next, please. And then we also have another upcoming technical presentation. This is going to be in Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt has been giving us back-to-back this time. Please don't miss it. A quantitative seismic AVO response atlas for Agamoba, deep water portfolio exploration, offshore Nigeria. So we're looking up to this technical presentation, so don't miss it, please. Next. Yeah, and then we're having this come up from the UK chapter. And so leveraging digital transformation solutions to unlock new possibilities in the energy industry. Okay, this is actually coming from the North American chapter, sorry. And that will be on the 28th of June. Don't miss out on this presentation. Of course, the 2024 NAPA Annual International Conference and Exhibition is here. If you have not sent your abstract, please make sure that you sign it and also make preparations to attend. The call for abstract is on, and obviously also we're preparing for elections, and very soon we're going to be voting. So look up to all the updates on our website and then I'm sure you'll get further information on the conference. Next, please. Okay, this shows the exhibition plan, floor plan for the conference. Most of them have been taken up already. We have almost 90% sponsorship. And so if you want a space, you can book for one. Look at our website, you'll get to know where and who to contact. Please. Thank you very much. Yeah, and summer program is on. The summer program is on. We just finished one. The next one is coming up on the 20th and 21st. It was mind-boggling and mind-blowing. And this one also is going to be a big bump. So make sure that you attend a summer school. This is described as reservoir description, rather called reservoir description from cost to seismic. The eligibility is up there. For members, is 20,000. Non-members is 80,000. And of course, the others are written out there. So make sure you plan for it and you attend it. It's online. And our basic evaluation competition, the preparation is on. So I hope that you've keyed in, especially the schools and the university. It's always a great opportunity to showcase our students from different universities as we compete for the best. And so the volunteer, we have volunteers and mentorship, during the program. You can link up with the NAPE UAP team to find out how you can volunteer during this process. Next, please. Oh, yes. And so this is the Geologist Life Challenge, the UAP program. Please look up to this, and I'm sure that you're going to be blessed. It has to do with capturing, realities, all right? And then posting on social media, and the prize is attached to it. So make sure that you're part of this. You can win a lot of money. You can win a lot of money. Next. So this challenge is to unveil the truth in geoscience. Okay, so early bird registration is on, and for Nigerian Energy Conference, the NOC Energy Conference, and so make sure that you're part of it. We are very much part of this. The last but not the least, please make sure that you pay your dues. Student dues is 2,000, active members 12,000, associate members is 12,000, corporate members is 50,000. What makes us tick is our dues payment. So we need to be committed to our dues payment, and the bank account details are there. And you can also contact your local chapters to get the bank account details. So thank you very much, everyone, once again, for being part of our technical session this month. And we'll round up at this time. I'll call on Inyebong to lead us with the closing prayers. Thank you. Inyebong.
In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Father Lord, I thank you for a successful technical presentation held today. I thank you for your Calabar chapter. I thank you for our speaker, the attendees. I say may your name be highly exalted in the name of Jesus. Father, as we all return back to our different places of work, Father, I ask grace to do more of your work and for the humanity in the name of Jesus. I cover our chapters with all the escorts. I ask for peace and grace from you, O Lord, upon our life in the name of Jesus. In Jesus' name.